Daniel Reese and Emily Grant never imagined their paths would collide in a nightmare hidden behind a badge. One was the town's celebrated hero, the other a rookie officer just learning the ropes. But when Reese turned off his body cam, the line between protector and predator disappeared, setting in motion a chain of events that would shatter a community's trust forever. Officer Daniel Reese was the kind of man everyone trusted. In the quiet town of Brookhaven, he was more than just a police officer. He was a symbol of safety. He had served the community for nearly a decade, earning multiple awards for bravery and professionalism. People spoke his name with pride, saying things like, "If every cop were like Reese, the world would be a better place." He greeted shop owners by name, handed out stickers to kids, and always seemed to show up exactly when someone needed help. To most, he was the perfect example of what a public servant should be. But behind the uniform, Daniel Reese was something else entirely. The same charm that made people adore him also made them blind to his secrets. He knew how to read faces, how to say exactly what people wanted to hear. He had learned early in his career that power didn't always come from violence. It came from trust. And in Brookhaven, everyone trusted him completely. He took advantage of that blind faith in small ways at first, bending minor rules, taking evidence shortcuts, or ignoring calls he didn't want to handle. Nothing major, nothing noticeable. But each time he got away with it, his confidence grew. Reese's co-workers noticed small inconsistencies now and then. His reports were always flawless, yet something about them felt rehearsed. He always seemed to be in the right place at the right time when things went wrong, and he never made mistakes. It was as if he had built a version of himself too perfect to be real. No one questioned him, though. His record was clean, his demeanor professional, and his results impressive. People assumed he was simply gifted. The truth began to show itself one summer evening. The sun had just dipped behind the hills when Reese pulled over a young woman driving home from work. It was supposed to be a routine stop, at least that's what his report would later claim. His dashcam showed the car pulling to the side, his calm approach, and a polite exchange of words. Then, as required by policy, his body cam recorded the beginning of the encounter. The woman appeared nervous but cooperative. Reese spoke softly, reassuring her that everything would be fine. Then, as he leaned toward his vest, the small green light on his camera blinked off. He told himself it was just for a moment, just to handle things privately. But deep down, he knew this wasn't the first time he had done it. Turning off the camera had become a ritual, a quiet act of rebellion that gave him complete control over what the world could see. The town would later learn that in those few minutes of darkness, everything changed. When Reese drove back to the station later that night, he looked calm, collected, and professional as always. He filed his report neatly, clocked out, and went home. No one suspected a thing. But that night marked the beginning of Brookhaven's darkest chapter, the first sign that their hero wasn't who they thought he was. The morning after the traffic stop, the town of Brookhaven awoke to a shock that shook its sense of safety to the core. The young woman pulled over by Officer Reese was found on a dirt road outside of town, disoriented and bruised, her clothes torn in ways that suggested a struggle. Her memories of the night were fragmented and hazy, like fragments of a dream that refused to make sense. She remembered the flashing lights of the cruiser, the badge gleaming in the darkness, and a calm voice that promised help. After that, everything was blank. Her sense of time had disappeared, leaving her with only fear and confusion. Emergency responders were called to the scene, their faces drawn and serious as they assessed her condition. They found no signs of other vehicles or witnesses. It was as if she had vanished into thin air and been returned with no explanation. Paramedics worked quickly to stabilize her before taking her to the hospital, while local law enforcement arrived to secure the area and begin a preliminary investigation. For the people of Brookhaven, the situation was terrifying, because it wasn't a random accident or a stranger in the woods. It involved one of their most trusted officers. When detectives reviewed the body cam footage from Reese's cruiser, they noticed the abrupt shutdown. The screen went black for several minutes during the traffic stop, and when it resumed, it showed nothing unusual. Reese's explanation was simple: a technical malfunction. The police chief supported him, stating that equipment failures were rare, but not impossible, and his written report mirrored the footage. Nothing seemed amiss. The young woman's fragmented recollections were difficult to match to concrete evidence, leaving investigators frustrated and uncertain. Despite the official reassurances, rumors began to circulate. People whispered in grocery stores, at school events, and in local cafes. Some recalled small incidents from the past, how Reese had been unusually insistent in certain stops, how some individuals had spoken of feeling uncomfortable around him. Most dismissed these thoughts at first, unwilling to consider the possibility that a man they admired could be dangerous. The town struggled to reconcile their image of a hero with the fear that now lingered in the shadows. Even among his colleagues, unease began to grow. Some officers noticed Reese's precision bordered on perfection, the way he seemed to know exactly where to be at any moment, how to deflect scrutiny, and how to maintain composure even under pressure. They had always thought of it as skill, dedication, and a strong sense of duty. Now it felt like control, calculated and deliberate. The discrepancy between what was recorded and what had happened gnawed at those who were brave enough to question it. Meanwhile, the young woman slowly began to piece together fragments of her memory. There were images of being restrained, of the oppressive quiet of the cruiser, of lights dimming, and of a sense that she had no choice. Every recollection deepened the horror of what had happened. She could not explain why Reese had turned off the body cam or what those minutes had contained, but she knew instinctively that something in the law meant to protect her had been used to harm her instead. The town had always trusted the badge to ensure safety. That morning, it became clear that trust alone was not enough. In the months following the young woman's near-fatal encounter, the pattern began to emerge. One by one, other women came forward with stories that were eerily similar. They spoke of late-night traffic stops, of officers who approached with a calm, almost reassuring tone, and of an abrupt sense of control that left them immobilized. They remembered flashing lights, a badge, a uniform, but little else. Each report alone might have seemed like an unfortunate coincidence, yet when collected together, a chilling picture began to form. The details overlapped too closely to ignore. Detectives reopened the cases, combing through old logs, patrol records, and body cam footage. They discovered an unsettling trend. Every time one of these women had been stopped, the officer's camera had inexplicably shut off. Reese had claimed technical malfunctions in every instance, and official reports always painted a picture of professional conduct. The system itself seemed to shield him, as though it had been manipulated from the inside. It became clear that whoever was responsible knew exactly how to exploit procedural loopholes and weaknesses in surveillance technology. Reese's mastery of his environment made him almost untouchable. He had spent years learning the rhythms of law enforcement, how officers reviewed footage, how reports were filed, how GPS logs could be edited or erased. Every move he made was calculated, every action designed to protect himself. He had turned the very tools meant to prevent abuse of power into instruments of concealment. No one suspected him openly because he had built an image of reliability too strong to question. But the more evidence surfaced, the more whispers spread. Fellow officers started to glance at him differently, a small flicker of doubt creeping into their minds. It was a rookie officer named Emily Grant who first noticed a pattern that no one else had connected. She was assigned to log and archive patrol footage, a tedious job that left her hours alone with the data. One evening, she saw that Reese's body cam had failed at the exact same time on multiple Fridays. At first, she assumed it was a coincidence, a technical quirk of the equipment. But the repetition nagged at her, an itch she couldn't ignore. Emily dug deeper, reviewing archived files, cross-referencing timestamps and comparing patrol routes. What she found disturbed her. There were gaps in the logs that seemed too precise to be accidental, files that had been overwritten, and footage that had been altered or hidden. The deeper Emily looked, the clearer it became that Reese had been covering his tracks deliberately. He had developed a system for controlling what was recorded and what was not. The realization was terrifying. He wasn't just a cop who had made a mistake. He was a predator who had mastered the mechanisms of authority to hide his crimes. Every malfunction, every missing minute, every story from frightened women was no longer random. It was a pattern of manipulation, meticulously orchestrated. As Emily continued her investigation quietly, she realized that the implications went far beyond her own conscience. Reese's actions had violated the very foundation of trust between law enforcement and the community. If the evidence could be proven, it would shatter the town's faith in the system and reveal a darkness no one in Brookhaven had been prepared to face. The closer she got to uncovering the truth, the more dangerous the situation became, and the more it became clear that Reese had anticipated someone would eventually look too closely and had already planned how to stay one step ahead. Emily's discovery of the unusual pattern in Reese's bodycam recordings was only the beginning. Late nights, spent poring over servers and encrypted folders, revealed something she had not anticipated: a hidden archive of files labeled simply as -revisions. The folder was buried deep in the department's digital storage, accessible only through a series of administrative privileges that most officers never needed. It was as if someone had deliberately hidden the evidence in plain sight, knowing only the most diligent would ever notice. Emily felt a chill when she realized what she had found. These were not routine logs or backup files. They were raw, unedited recordings from patrol cars, each time stamped and preserved in full detail, including moments that were never reported. Most of the files were ordinary: traffic stops, domestic disputes, routine checks. But as she scrolled through them, her heart sank. One file, marked with the date of the first woman's stop, captured Reese's cruiser parked quietly along a dark, wooded road. The camera angle was fixed inside the car, showing the dashboard and the surrounding shadows outside. Minutes passed, with only the hum of the engine, and then the footage froze. When it resumed, it showed Reese stepping out of the vehicle, adjusting his uniform, and returning to the driver's seat. The small, deliberate movements were mundane on the surface, but the timing and secrecy suggested something far more sinister. Emily realized this footage was what had been replaced in official records, sanitized and stripped of any evidence that could reveal the truth. Her hands shook as she copied the files to a secure drive. The weight of the discovery was overwhelming. She understood that these recordings were not merely logs. They were proof of manipulation, proof that Reese had intentionally concealed his actions. The precision with which he had controlled the narrative, erasing or replacing footage, revealed a methodical and calculated mind. He had spent years mastering the system from within, ensuring that nothing incriminating could reach the official record. The implications were terrifying. Not only had he violated the trust of the community, but he had weaponized the very technology designed to protect it. Emily knew she could not report this directly without risking retaliation or suppression. Instead, she reached out anonymously to an independent journalist known for investigative reporting. Within days, the story began to spread beyond the confines of Brookhaven. Public outrage was immediate. The town, which had always celebrated Reese as a hero, was forced to confront the possibility that the man they trusted had been hiding a dangerous secret. The police department suspended him pending investigation, but Reese was nowhere to be found. His absence only deepened the fear and suspicion. When authorities searched his home, it was immaculate, perfectly ordered, as though no one had lived there. On the kitchen counter, Emily later learned, lay his bodycam, untouched and powered off. A single file was marked: Last Shift. It was a quiet, ominous reminder that he had left something behind intentionally, a final piece of the puzzle for anyone brave enough to uncover it. The discovery of that hidden folder had pulled back the curtain on Reese's carefully constructed facade, revealing a predator who had spent years blending seamlessly into the role of a protector, only to exploit it for his own dark purposes. The file labeled "Last Shift" began innocuously enough, showing Reese sitting alone in his cruiser, the dashboard lights casting a cold glow across his face. He appeared calm, almost eerily composed, his eyes focused on the camera in a way that suggested awareness and intent. The first few minutes were unremarkable. The engine hummed softly, and the night was quiet, punctuated only by the occasional distant sound of traffic. But as the minutes passed, a subtle tension began to build, as if the camera itself had become a witness to something unspeakable. Reese spoke directly to it, describing his actions with a detachment that made the words all the more chilling. He admitted that he had learned to hide in plain sight, to manipulate trust and exploit procedure to cover his tracks. His calm, deliberate explanation suggested that what he had done was not impulsive, but carefully planned over years. Then the camera shifted to the passenger seat, capturing a scene that froze the viewers in horror. His badge and gun were neatly placed beside a folded note. The handwriting was precise, deliberate, almost clinical. The note contained names, women who had been stopped, violated, and released, their experiences erased from official records. Beneath the list, Reese had scrawled a final message, one that made it clear he understood the power of the camera and of documentation. "Now you will see the truth when the camera stays on." The words were both a confession and a challenge, a taunt directed at anyone who thought they could contain him. As the recording continued, Reese's composure remained unsettlingly steady. He spoke of control, of how easy it had been to manipulate the system, to become untouchable by exploiting trust, procedure, and expectation. Every glance toward the camera, every deliberate movement, reinforced the cold precision of his mind. The viewer could sense the meticulous calculation behind every detail, the way he had orchestrated his public persona while concealing a growing darkness. It was the culmination of years spent mastering perception, shaping narrative, and bending reality to suit his own ends. Hours later, Reese's car was found submerged in a nearby lake, headlights flickering under the murky water. The engine was still running, the cabin eerily intact, the body never recovered. Investigators could only speculate. Had he escaped, leaving no trace behind? Or had he chosen this as a final act of control, a way to vanish completely while leaving the evidence for the world to discover? The town of Brookhaven was left with questions that had no answers, haunted by the knowledge that one of their most trusted protectors had been a predator all along. The aftermath rippled through the community. Public trust was shattered, friendships strained, and the police department faced scrutiny unlike anything it had experienced before. Emily's actions in uncovering the hidden files became a quiet legend within law enforcement circles, a testament to the courage required to confront corruption from within. Yet the sense of unease persisted. No one could ever truly know the full extent of Reese's actions or the darkness that had lurked beneath the surface of a trusted uniform. In the end, his Bodycam, the very device designed to capture truth, had become both his confession and his legacy, revealing that in the wrong hands, power could be hidden in plain sight and trust could be weaponized in ways no one imagined.